Pop quiz. How can we incorporate our cultures into a fantasy setting that we're trying to write? Especially if they are not within the typical cultural things that are used in fantasy, whether contemporary or, historical fantasy. That's what we're gonna discuss today on StoryPod Podcast. I would say look at fantasy right now that's popular, and the cultures that often inform fantasy, and do what they did, but just make it your own culture. A lot of what makes up our fantasy, there's way more diversity in it now, but for a long time, a lot of what made up our fantasy was based in like European cultures, right? What I'm remembering of fantasy that I've consumed throughout the years and that I see is a lot of European culture. So we're using like the political structures of different European cultures, right? In different time periods. A lot of the aesthetic, a lot of the political structures are based on European things. So we've got kings and queens and castles. We've got elves and we've got courts of these people, and they wrote from their mythology. So they're pulling from their pantheon of gods. They're pulling from their ideas of how magic works and things like that. They're pulling from their standards of beauty. When they're describing the heroes and heroines, they describe what is beautiful in their culture. Yeah, the social mores, the religion, and look to your culture, look to your myths. If your culture has like a pantheon of gods and things like that, look to those stories. Look to how does your culture interact with supernatural elements? What elements did they pull from European culture to create fantasy? And now just do the same with yours. Girl, just do the same with yours. Again, as always, it depends on this type of story that you're trying to tell. But you can absolutely build the history of your world and base it on Venezuelan culture. And you mix your imagination with the cultural and historical and mythological and religious and societal history of Venezuela. There you go. That's my answer. I'm not going to say any more.